There's a moment that splits lives in half. It doesn't arrive with fireworks, it arrives in silence. You're staring at your phone, refreshing, pulling a dead lever. No new messages. No, you got this. No plan from a friend. No lifeline from family. Just an empty screen and the sound of your own breathing. You look around the room and realize the truth your nervous system has been trying to avoid. No one is coming right now. No one is going to save you. No one is going to invest in your vision because they can't see it yet. No one is going to push you when you're tired, and if you fall, you will hit the floor without an audience. For most people, this is the beginning of collapse. They call it depression, burnout, bad luck, being unseen. They treat the empty room like an accusation. They ask the universe why they were abandoned, then they crawl back to the herd for warmth. But if you're still watching, you're not most people. For the outlier, this moment isn't a tragedy, it's a baptism. It's the first time you see the world the way Machiavelli saw it, not as a family, but as a battlefield of interests. The crowd doesn't support you because the crowd doesn't support what threatens it. People cheer for safety. They applaud what's familiar. They back winners after the win, not before. And the dangerous part isn't their indifference. The dangerous part is what their support would cost you if it ever arrived early. Because support is rarely free. It comes with invisible strings. It comes with opinions. It comes with compromise. It comes with the slow demand to be palatable, to be reasonable, to move at the speed of the group, to explain your ambition until it becomes small enough for them to tolerate. Most men don't fail because they lacked help. They fail because they kept begging for it. They spent their energy scanning the horizon for a savior instead of building the ladder. So let's say it plainly. Your loneliness is not a defect. It's an advantage you haven't learned to use. If no one supports you, you have zero masters. If nobody funded your rise, nobody owns your story. If nobody built your foundation, nobody can claim the bricks. When you win alone, your power is clean. It isn't borrowed. It can't be withdrawn. That's why Machiavelli warned princes about relying on auxiliary forces, borrowed armies, borrowed influence, borrowed loyalty. If they lose, you're defeated. If they win, you become their prisoner. Support feels like rescue, but it can turn into a cage. And here's the part that will sting. Deep down, some part of you still wants to be loved first. You want proof that your dream is real before you bleed for it. You want permission. You want a committee to approve your destiny. That part of you is the herd animal, and it will get you killed, metaphorically, financially, spiritually. The herd doesn't reward those who leave it. It punishes them until their results are undeniable. So, this video isn't going to motivate you. Motivation is a drug. It wears off. What you need is strategy. You need psychological weapons that work when the room is silent, when the bank account is thin, when your body is tired, when nobody claps. You need an internal engine that runs on something darker than encouragement, something that doesn't require anyone's permission to ignite. In the next minutes, I'm going to give you 7 Machiavellian psychology tricks to win with zero support. Not theories, not quotes to feel intelligent. Practical moves that turn isolation into leverage. How to stop bleeding validation. How to convert rejection into fuel. How to become invisible and unstoppable. And how to build internal authority so you don't collapse when nobody's watching. But listen carefully before we begin, because this is where weak men click away. Support is not just comfort. Support is also delay. It keeps you negotiating with other people's moods, other people's schedules, other people's approval. It teaches you to move only when you're carried, and the day the carrying stops, you stop. If you want to win, you have to accept the empty room and stop treating it like a curse. The empty room is space. Space to think, space to sharpen, space to build without interference. The question isn't whether anyone supports you. The real question is whether you're brave enough to become dangerous without them. You were raised on a comforting lie that success is a group project, that if you just find the right people, the right mentor, the right team, the right audience, everything unlocks. Society trains you to believe your life is a ladder you climb only if someone else holds it steady. School rewards, collaboration, work rewards, networking. Even self-help sells the fantasy of a cheering section. And it sounds wise because it sounds human. But Machiavelli would laugh at it because he understood something brutal. People don't support you out of love. They support you when it serves their interests, their identity, or their image. And the moment it stops serving them, that support evaporates. So if your plan requires other people to behave consistently, your plan is already weak. Here's what nobody tells you. Support has a hidden cost. It creates debt. When someone helps you, they own a piece of your story. When someone funds you, they gain a vote. When someone emotionally carries you, they gain the power to withdraw it at the worst possible moment. Support feels like safety, but it often becomes a spiderweb, soft, comfortable, and quietly restrictive. It catches you, yes, but it also traps you. It teaches you to move only when you're held. That's why so many talented people stay stuck. They don't lack ability. They lack sovereignty. They keep scanning for permission. They dilute their ambition to make it reasonable. They edit their goals so they don't intimidate anyone. They wait until the room agrees before they take a step. And every time they do that, they hand the steering wheel of their life to people who don't even know how to drive themselves. Machiavelli's principle is simple. Rely on what is in your control, not on what is in the control of others. Because others are unstable. They get jealous, they get bored, they get scared. They change their minds. Today they're inspired by you. Tomorrow your ambition makes them uncomfortable. Today they say, go for it. Tomorrow they say, be realistic. And if your momentum depends on their mood, you will die slowly. So you have to accept what I call the 0 point. The 0 point is the moment you stop bargaining with the world. You look at your resources, your contacts, your bank account, your environment, and you see nothing reliable except you. No safety net. No validation, no guaranteed allies, just your own reflection. Most people panic here. They interpret the 0 point as abandonment. But it's not abandonment, it's freedom. Zero support means zero masters. If nobody gave you anything, nobody can claim you. If nobody lifted you, nobody can pull the ladder out from under you. If you build it alone, you keep the throne. This is the outlier's advantage. You don't have to negotiate. You don't have to compromise the vision to keep the peace. You can move fast, pivot instantly, become ruthless with your time. While groups are holding meetings about meetings, you can change your entire life in a week because you answer to one authority, your own decision. But here's the danger, the part that crushes most independent people. Freedom without inner law becomes entropy. When no one is watching, most men decay. They sleep in, they scroll, they chase comfort, they call it rest, they call it self-care. But it's slow suicide. Without external enforcement, the weak part of you takes power, and the weak part of you doesn't want victory, it wants relief. So the 0 point is not the end, it's the starting line, and to win from that place, you need an operating system, psychological tricks that replace external support with internal authority. That's what the next 7 moves are. They're not motivational, they're enforcement mechanisms. They turn loneliness into leverage and isolation into speed. Because once you accept the 0 point, the question becomes simple. If nobody is coming to save you, will you become the kind of man who doesn't need saving? The first thing you have to kill is not your laziness, it's your addiction. Validation, addiction. Most people think they want success. What they actually want is to be seen wanting success. They want the applause before the performance. They want the identity without the evidence. So they talk. They announce, they hint, they post, they rehearse the future out loud because it feels like progress. And the moment people react, "That's amazing, I'm proud of you, you're going to crush it," their brain gets the reward early. That early reward is poison, because the nervous system learns a brutal lesson. Talking gets you the feeling of winning without the cost of winning. So you leak the hunger, you leak the urgency. You become full on compliments and empty on results. Then, when the work gets hard, you wonder why you can't move. You already consumed the dopamine that was supposed to fuel the climb. This is why zero support is secretly a gift. It starves the addiction. But you have to commit to the starvation rule consciously. Stop feeding the need to be understood. Stop seeking approval. Stop arguing with skeptics. Stop trying to convert uninterested people into believers. Every time you explain your vision to someone who can't hold it, you're not communicating, you're bleeding. You're handing them the power to puncture your momentum with a sentence. That sounds risky. Are you sure? Be realistic. And because a part of you still craves acceptance, you start negotiating with your dream to keep their comfort. That's how greatness gets domesticated. Machiavelli would call this weak positioning. If you need the crowd to agree, the crowd owns you. If you need people to validate your direction, they become your compass. And a compass controlled by other people's fears will lead you to a life you hate. So here's trick number 1, starvation. You don't announce, you don't seek permission, you don't recruit belief. You build in silence until results speak for you. Not because you're hiding, because you're conserving energy. Because you're refusing to turn your ambition into a public debate. And this requires a vow of silence framework, simple rules that keep you from leaking your power. Rule 1. Keep plans vague. If someone asks what you're working on, you give them a soft answer, a project, a new direction, building something. Not because you're mysterious, because specifics invite opinions, and opinions invite doubt. You don't need commentary, you need construction. Rule 2. Speak in outcomes, not intentions. Intentions are cheap and they trigger discussion. Outcomes end discussion. When you're asked, "How's it going?" don't narrate the dream. Say, "Progressing," then go back to work. If there's no outcome yet, there's nothing to report. Let the silence be uncomfortable. That discomfort is pressure. Rule 3. Never argue with non-investors. If someone is not contributing time, money, skill, or support, they don't get a vote. Their skepticism is not wisdom. It's usually self-defense. You don't debate it, you nod and move. The moment you argue, you lower your status to the level of someone seeking a verdict. Rule 4. Don't perform struggle. Complaining is just another form of seeking validation. Tell me, "I'm doing enough." The outlier doesn't need comfort, he needs momentum. If you're struggling, tighten the protocol. Change the environment, increase the reps. Don't narrate pain like a confession, use it like fuel. Because here's what happens when you stop talking. Your ambition has nowhere to go except into your hands. The pressure builds. That pressure becomes restlessness. The restlessness becomes work. And the work becomes evidence. Silence doesn't make you weaker, it makes you denser. It compresses your energy into something sharp. And once you become sharp, something strange happens. People start sensing it. The same ones who ignored you begin watching, not because you begged them, because your results started radiating. But we're not there yet, because starving validation creates pressure, and the next trick teaches you how to aim that pressure like a weapon, how to convert rejection, indifference, and disrespect into a fuel that doesn't run out. Most people process rejection like a funeral. They get quiet, they get soft, they get sad. They replay the scene and ask, "What's wrong with me?" Sadness turns you inward in the worst way. It makes you heavy. It makes you want to lie down and disappear. And that's exactly why the world loves selling you healing narratives that keep you passive. Breathe, accept, move on, be nice, be understanding. It creates a population that never bites back. Outliers don't do funerals for rejection. They do alchemy. They take rejection and turn it into fuel, not as rage. Rage is sloppy. Rage makes you impulsive, reactive, and easy to control. What you need is colder, defiance. The kind that doesn't shout, the kind that moves in silence and shows up in results. Here's the truth. Nobody is coming to validate you. That's not unfair. That's reality. People are wired to respect strength and follow outcomes. They don't invest in potential because potential is cheap. Everybody has potential, but very few have proof. So when you get ignored, doubted, ridiculed, left on read, don't interpret it as a verdict. Interpret it as information. The market is open. The field is empty. The seat is available. You're not good enough. Good. Now you have a target. No one cares. Perfect. Now you can build without interruption. They laughed. Excellent. Now you have a furnace. This is the emotional contrast you must understand. Sadness makes you want comfort. Anger makes you want motion. Sadness says, "Please love me." Defiance says, "Watch me." Sadness begs for support. Defiance manufactures strength. And the difference between the two is the difference between being managed by the crowd and becoming dangerous to the crowd. Machiavelli saw this clearly. Most men obey immediate needs: approval, safety, belonging, comfort. They choose what feels good today. The outlier obeys a future need: glory, freedom, power, self-respect. He chooses what pays later. That's why he can endure what others can't. He's not motivated by pleasure. He's motivated by destiny, and sometimes by spite. Let's get more precise. Defiance Fuel is a controlled villain origin story. Not, "I'm evil now," not, "I hate everyone," but a disciplined refusal to be dismissed. You stop expecting fairness. You stop expecting recognition. You stop expecting people to understand. And you take the emotional energy you were about to spend on self-pity and you pour it into output. Pain becomes a command. Produce. Ignored, work. Doubted, train. Mocked, build. Excluded, multiply. Betrayed, upgrade. This is how you create a Pavlovian response, where rejection triggers action instead of collapse. You condition your nervous system like a weapon. Every time you feel that sting in the chest, someone didn't reply, someone disrespected you, someone undermined you, you don't run to social media for comfort. You don't run to friends to complain. You run to the work. And you tell yourself the sentence that changes everything. This is fuel. But you have to use it correctly. Defiance Fuel is not for spending on fantasies. It's for spending on reps. Concrete reps. Pages written, weight lifted, skills learned, calls made, videos edited, money saved. You don't feel defiant, you behave defiant. You become the kind of person who responds to disrespect by becoming unrecognizable. And here's the cruel twist. Once you do this long enough, the sting changes shape. It stops hurting and starts sharpening. You begin to crave the test because the test creates growth. You stop asking for support because you realize support would dilute your fire. That's why this path works. It takes what would have broken you and turns it into propulsion. But there's still one problem. Defiance can become lonely. The more you upgrade, the less you relate to the room. And if you don't know how to handle that solitude, you'll either crawl back to the herd or self-destruct just to feel human again. That's why the next trick matters. It's not about becoming social. It's about turning loneliness into focus instead of pain, becoming invisible on purpose, so your isolation becomes a weapon, not a wound. Once you accept that no one is coming, you face a choice most people never survive. You either keep performing or you disappear. The weak man performs. He turns his struggle into a personality. He keeps talking about what he's going to do because talking makes him feel less alone. He needs witnesses. He needs reaction. He needs someone to say, "Keep going," because without that voice, he hears his own doubts too clearly. The outlier goes into the ghost phase. Ghost mode is not depression. It's not bitterness. It's strategic invisibility. If you have no audience, you stop performing. If you stop performing, you stop wasting energy. And when you stop wasting energy, you become lethal. Here's the truth that will offend social people. Talking leaks power. Every time you explain your plan, you bleed urgency. Every time you argue your vision, you burn fuel. Every time you seek attention, you dilute focus. You can feel it in your body. You tell someone your big goal, they respond with doubt or indifference, and suddenly your chest tightens, the dream feels smaller, the work feels heavier. That's not negative energy, that's biology. Your nervous system senses social risk and starts negotiating with your ambition to keep you safe. Ghost mode removes the negotiation. Because in ghost mode, your work becomes your language, and results are a language no one can interrupt. So, here's the ghost protocol. Simple, brutal, effective. First, withdraw by design, not by accident. Most people isolate because they're broken. You isolate because you're building. That difference matters. You're not hiding from people. You're protecting your focus from noise. You choose a season, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, where your social life becomes minimal and intentional, not to punish anyone, to save yourself. Second, cut needless obligations. The herd will keep you busy forever. Birthdays you don't care about, group chats that rot your brain, drinks that steal your next morning, quick calls that turn into emotional labor. In ghost mode, you stop paying the social tax. You decline politely. You don't explain. You just disappear from the circuits that drain you. Third, eliminate dopamine leaks. This is where most men lie to themselves. They think they're alone, but they're not. They're constantly sedated. Social media, porn, junk food, binge content, endless scrolling. That isn't rest. That's self-anesthesia. It keeps you from feeling the pressure that would otherwise force you to act. Ghost mode is not just social silence, it's stimulus discipline. You stop feeding your brain cheap pleasure so it can hunger for real wins again. Fourth, create a closed environment. Phone on silent, notifications off, workspace clean, schedule simple, same hours, same routine, same focus blocks. Your life becomes boring on purpose because boredom is the doorway to depth. The world is loud because loud keeps people shallow. You don't need loud, you need depth. Fifth, track outputs, not moods. Ghosts don't feel motivated, they measure. Pages written, skills practiced, work shipped, calls made, money saved, weight lifted. The herd lives in emotion, the outlier lives in evidence. And here's the elite part. This is where it starts feeling like a secret society. When you go quiet, you start hearing your own mind again. At first, the silence will be violent. Your thoughts will scream, you'll feel restless, you'll crave comfort, you'll want to text someone just to break the tension. Good. That tension is pressure, and pressure is energy. Most people release that pressure through talking, complaining, venting, fantasizing. The ghost does not release it, the ghost channels it. Because when you have a massive goal trapped inside you with no outlet, the pressure builds like steam in a sealed boiler. It becomes physical, it becomes aggression, it becomes obsession. And obsession, used correctly, is not a sickness, it's the price of independence. The world calls obsession unhealthy because the world is designed for average people. Average people can't handle depth, they drown in it. But if you have zero support, you don't get to be average. You either become obsessed or you become forgotten. And that's the open loop you need to sit with. Once you enter ghost mode, you'll start producing at a level that makes your old life impossible to return to. Because the next trick isn't about isolation anymore. It's about what you build inside that isolation, how you turn this pressure into mastery until you become undeniable. Ghost mode gives you space. Obsession gives you energy. But none of it matters if your energy has no direction. If you're alone and unfocused, you don't become powerful, you become anxious. You become a man trapped in his own head, pacing in circles. That's why unsupported people have one non-negotiable job: become undeniable. Because when nobody supports you, you don't have social leverage, you don't have borrowed credibility, you don't have a safety net of connections. So you replace all of that with one thing the world cannot argue with: competence. Mastery is the only permission slip that doesn't require a signature. This is what most people miss. They waste years trying to be understood, trying to be liked, trying to be invited. Machiavelli would tell you, stop chasing seats at tables that don't need you. Build a skill set so lethal the table gets built around you. That's obsession engineering. Not random hustle, not burnout theater. Engineering, turning your isolation into a factory that produces proof. Here's the system. First, deep work blocks. Your advantage is not effort, it's depth. Corporations have meetings, families have noise, friends have obligations. You have silence. Use it like a weapon. 2 blocks a day, real blocks, where your phone is dead, notifications are gone, and you enter a trance. 90 minutes minimum, 4 hours if you can. This is where you build the thing people only talk about. The mistake weak men make is thinking productivity is constant motion. It's not. It's concentrated violence. You don't need 12 hours of busy. You need 2 hours of ruthless focus. That's how you outpace people with teams. Second, brutal skill acquisition. Pick one high-leverage skill tied directly to your outcome: writing, editing, sales, coding, design, speaking, strategy, fitness, whatever your arena is. Then, stop dabbling. Dabbling is for people with support. You don't have that luxury. You learn like your life depends on it, because it does. And here's the rule. Don't consume information like entertainment. Consume it like ammunition. Study the best in your niche. Break their work down. recreate it, reverse engineer it, improve it. This is not inspiration. This is warfare. Third, deliberate practice, not repetition. Most people practice by doing what they're already good at. That's ego. Deliberate practice is doing what exposes your weakness. It is uncomfortable by design. You target the one thing that makes your work average and you attack it daily, one weakness at a time, one brutal improvement loop at a time. That's how you become dangerous fast. Fourth, feedback loops. If you have no mentor, you still need feedback. The world becomes your mirror. Metrics, results, response, cold reality. Ship small things, measure response, adjust quietly, repeat. Your ego will want to romanticize the process. Don't. The market is honest even when people aren't. It will tell you what works if you're humble enough to listen. And here's the key psychological shift. You stop needing encouragement because evidence becomes your encouragement. You become the kind of man who trusts himself because he has proof he can produce. Confidence stops being a mood and becomes a residue, left behind by kept promises and repeated wins. This is why that Steve Martin line matters. Be so good they can't ignore you. Notice it doesn't say, be so lovable they'll support you. Love is unstable, attention is fickle. People will clap today and forget tomorrow. But competence forces attention. It forces respect. It forces offers. And when you're undeniable, support becomes irrelevant. In fact, the irony is cruel. Support shows up late. People love backing winners. They hate backing strugglers. So, your job is not to beg for belief. Your job is to manufacture the win. But there's a deeper game underneath mastery. Because mastery requires consistency, and consistency requires an authority inside you that doesn't negotiate with weakness. Talent doesn't get you there. Motivation doesn't get you there. Self-governance does. And that's the next trick, the one that separates the men who burn hot for a month from the men who become permanent threats. Building a commander inside yourself who enforces the work when no one is watching. Here's the brutal truth about winning alone. Freedom exposes weakness. When nobody's watching, your excuses get louder. When nobody's expecting anything from you, your standards start negotiating. When there's no boss, no coach, no partner to witness the fall, you discover the real enemy isn't the world. It's the part of you that wants comfort more than it wants power. That's why most people fail in isolation. They don't lack talent, they lack hierarchy. Inside them, the weak self is in charge. The weak self is emotional, it's short-term, it's hungry for relief. It says, just today. It says, you deserve a break. It says, start tomorrow when you feel better. And because there's no external authority to override it, the weak self becomes the king. That's how free men decay into soft men. So trick number 5 is not about motivation, it's about governance. You split the self and build a commander inside you. Not in a schizophrenic way, in a strategic way. You stop pretending you're one unified person. You accept reality. There are competing forces inside you. One wants comfort, one wants dominance. One wants to scroll, one wants to build, one wants to be liked, one wants to be respected. And if you don't consciously choose who rules, the weakest voice wins by default. The commander is the part of you that thinks long-term. The commander is not nice. The commander is fair, and fairness isn't softness. Fairness means you do what must be done today so you don't suffer tomorrow. This is Machiavellian. A prince cannot be unstable. Instability invites attack. If your mood controls your behavior, you are a weak state. You are easy to invade. Your laziness is an invader. Your cravings are invaders. Your fear is an invader. Your emotions are not the enemy, but they cannot be the ruler. So how do you install the commander? First, kept promises. Confidence is not a belief, it's evidence. If you constantly promise yourself you'll change and then betray yourself, your nervous system stops trusting you. Your own mind treats you like a liar. And a man who doesn't trust himself seeks support everywhere else. So you start small and brutal. One promise per day that you keep no matter what. Wake time, training, one deep work block. A single, non-negotiable. Every kept promise is a brick. Over time, the commander becomes real because he has a track record. Second, discomfort practice. Most men avoid discomfort until life forces it on them. That makes them fragile. You don't wait. You train discomfort on purpose. Cold showers, hard workouts, delayed gratification, boredom, silence, saying no. Why? Because discomfort is the gym for authority. Each time you do something you don't feel like doing, you strengthen the part of you that commands. You teach your nervous system, feelings are data, not decisions. Third, physical training as political training. Your body is your first kingdom. If you can't govern your appetite, your sleep, your energy, don't talk to me about building empires. The gym is not just fitness, it's proof of sovereignty. It's where you practice obedience to a plan. It's where you confront pain and learn not to panic. A man who can't endure physical discomfort will fold under psychological pressure. Training is how you build a spine. Fourth, the morning negotiation. This is where kings are made. The moment you wake up, your weak self tries to seize power. 5 more minutes, start later, check your phone. That first battle sets the tone for the day. If you lose to the alarm clock, you've already declared the commander absent. So you win the morning negotiation with a simple rule. Feet on the floor immediately. No debate, no bargaining. The commander doesn't negotiate with weakness, he issues orders. And notice what's happening. You're building an internal chain of command. You're creating a system where the strongest part of you governs the weakest part of you. You're becoming your own father, your own coach, your own judge. That's what winning alone requires. No one is coming to enforce your standards, so you become the enforcement. But there's still a problem. A commander without law becomes a tyrant, and a commander without structure becomes a myth. You can feel disciplined for a week, then collapse. That's why the next trick is the non-negotiable. You must create protocols, laws, rituals, deadlines, and consequences. So, discipline happens even when your emotions rebel. Because power isn't a mood. Power is a system. Most people don't fail because they lack ambition. They fail because their ambition has no teeth. They set goals like they're making wishes. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to start the business. I'm going to get in shape. And then they wake up the next day and negotiate with themselves, like a weak government negotiating with rebels. They don't feel like it. They had a rough week. They start Monday, and nothing happens because there's no enforcement. A goal without enforcement is not a goal, it's a fantasy. Machiavelli understood this at the level of states and princes. Laws work because consequences exist. Authority matters because it can punish disorder. When there's no consequence, the citizens do what they want, and the kingdom decays. Your mind is the same. If your lazy self can break agreements with no penalty, it will break them forever. So trick #6 is about installing internal law. Not motivation, not inspiration, law. You're building a private regime where your future self rules your present self, where your standards are not suggestions, where your rituals create inevitability, because the man with zero support cannot rely on mood. He must rely on structure. Here's the four-part protocol: simple, brutal, effective. First, the morning win. Your day starts the moment your eyes open, and the first battle is always the same: comfort versus command. If you lose the first battle, you spend the whole day trying to recover authority. So you create a ritual that cannot be negotiated. Feet on the floor, water, movement, no phone. One small win that signals, I am in charge. Not because it's magical, because it's psychological. Your nervous system watches what you do, not what you promise. Second, deep work blocks. 2 blocks a day, minimum. No dopamine, no interruptions. Phone away, door closed. One output that matters. You don't need all-day hustle. You need concentrated violence. This is your asymmetrical advantage over supported people. They have meetings, chatter, obligations. You have silence. Use it, and treat deep work like law. Scheduled, tracked, audited. If you skip, you pay. Third, information diet. If you have zero support, your mind is your main asset. Most people feed it garbage, drama, gossip, outrage, seductive nonsense that makes them feel emotional but powerless. Then they wonder why they can't focus. A prince doesn't study gossip. He studies strategy. You do the same. Cut the news, the pointless scrolling, the motivation, addiction. Read philosophy. Read technical manuals. Study the best in your field. Every input should either sharpen you or rest you. If it numbs you, it's poison. Fourth, the evening review. This is where men become dangerous. At the end of the day, you audit yourself like a harsh ruler. No self-pity, no excuses. Ask one question: did I move the needle, or did I perform productivity? If you won, you record the win. If you failed, you correct it. You don't punish yourself emotionally, you punish yourself structurally. That's the difference between shame and law. Shame makes you spiral. Law makes you adjust. Now add the enforcement layer, because without consequences, rituals become optional. You need deadlines that hurt, real deadlines, public ones if necessary, or financial ones, or time-based ones. You need constraints that force action, and you need consequences that are immediate. Skip your deep work, you lose a privilege: no entertainment, no social time, no comfort. Break your sleep protocol, you pay with extra training or an earlier wake-up. The exact consequences are less important than the principle. The weak self must learn that disobedience costs. And you also reward execution, not with indulgence, but with reinforcement. A mark on a tracker, a small controlled reward. Progress you can measure. Your brain needs to see cause and effect. Work produces power. Laziness produces loss. This is how you become self-enforced. You stop needing accountability partners because you become your own judge. You stop needing motivation because your system runs even when you're tired. You become anti-fragile because failure doesn't break you. It triggers correction. But here's the cruel twist that comes next, and this is the open loop you need to remember. Once this starts working, once you rise quietly and results begin to show, they come back. The people who ignored you, the people who doubted you, the people who were too busy, they return when it's safe to return, and your final test won't be building alone. It will be resisting the temptation to let them rewrite history and claim a seat in a castle they didn't help you build. The most dangerous moment in your rise is not the beginning, when nobody believes in you. It's the middle, when you start winning, and suddenly everyone remembers your name. This is the return test, and it's where a lot of outliers lose their kingdom after they finally built it, because the old hunger comes back, the hunger to be accepted, the hunger to be loved by the same people who left you starving. And if you're not careful, you'll open the gates out of emotion and call it forgiveness. But listen closely. It's rarely forgiveness. It's usually weakness dressed up as being the bigger person. Because the return is predictable. It follows a script. At first, you were invisible. You were doing too much. You were being unrealistic. They didn't reply. They didn't show up. They minimized you, mocked you, or politely ignored you. Then you disappeared. You stopped talking. You started building. And months later, maybe years, the results surface. The numbers go up, the body changes, the confidence hardens, the work speaks, and that's when the ghosts return. A friend who couldn't spare 10 minutes suddenly wants dinner. A family member who doubted you suddenly says they're proud. An ex who left you for stability suddenly misses you. A co-worker who undermined you suddenly wants to collaborate. And they'll use one word that should make your stomach tighten: we. We always knew you could do it. We should build something together. We're so proud of us. That's not support, that's insertion. They're trying to climb onto your momentum and rewrite history so they don't feel ashamed for abandoning you. They want proximity to your victory because victory is status, and humans chase status like heat. Machiavelli would call this human nature. People don't betray you because they hate you. They betray you because it's useful, and they return for the same reason. It becomes useful again. They want access to your resources, your network, your aura, your stability. They want the benefits of your discipline without paying the price you paid. So, the return test is simple. Do you reward late loyalty? Here's the strategy: clean, calm, surgical. First, polite distance. You don't need revenge. You don't need speeches. You don't need to teach them a lesson. That's emotional. That's still you seeking validation from their reaction. Instead, you become a wall of glass, visible, civil, but untouchable. You respond, but you don't reattach. You smile, but you don't invite. You keep it light, formal, controlled. Second, selective access. Access is power. If someone didn't carry stones, they don't get to enter the castle like an owner. That doesn't mean you hate them. It means you understand gates. Not everyone deserves closeness. Not everyone deserves details. Not everyone deserves your time. You decide tiers, acquaintances, friendly, trusted, inner circle, and you give access based on pattern, not emotion. Third, no emotional speeches. This is where weak men collapse. They want to say, "You hurt me." They want the apology. They want closure. But closure is often a trap, because it turns into negotiation and guilt and promises and "I didn't mean it," and suddenly you're back in the old dynamic. If someone asks why you're distant, you keep it simple. "I'm focused," or "I keep my circle small." That's it. Power doesn't over-explain. Fourth, no rescuing, no funding chaos. Late supporters often arrive with needs. They want a job. They want a loan. They want you to invest in their idea. They want you to carry their disorder now that you have strength. Don't. Never fund chaos. Never tie your future to someone who hasn't proven discipline. Your success was built through sacrifice. Don't hand that sacrifice to someone who treats your work like a resource they can harvest. And here's the final rule you must tattoo into your mind. Support offered late is often ownership disguised as love. They didn't support you when it was pure risk. They support you when it's safe, when there's something to gain. That doesn't make them evil, it makes them human. But it means you must be strategic. A prince doesn't build alliances based on feelings. He builds them based on incentives, patterns, and loyalty under pressure. So you pass the return test by staying calm and staying sovereign. You don't punish people, you just don't let them vote. And the open loop into the final section is this. You didn't build this life to be accepted by people who needed you small. You built it for freedom. You built it so you could walk away, quietly, cleanly, without begging for anyone's permission. Because the final level of winning with zero support is not success. It's immunity. Here's what people don't understand about the unsupported path. It doesn't just make you successful, it makes you unbreakable. Because when you build without applause, your identity stops depending on applause. When you move without permission, your confidence stops needing permission. When you survive without rescue, you stop living with the fear of abandonment, because abandonment can't threaten someone who already learned how to stand alone. That's the real upgrade. Machiavelli warned rulers about reliance for a reason. Reliance makes you controllable. It turns your freedom into a negotiation. It makes your decisions softer because you're always calculating. Will they leave if I do this? Will I lose support if I say that? Will the room turn on me? And the moment your life depends on someone else's mood, you are no longer the author of your life. You are a hostage with good manners. Self-reliance is immunity. It doesn't mean you become cold. It means you become sovereign. You stop confusing loneliness with weakness. You stop confusing support with love. You stop confusing approval with truth. You see people clearly. You see yourself clearly. And you move like a man who knows that whatever happens, loss, betrayal, rejection, silence, you can rebuild. That's why this path hurts. It burns off delusion. It forces you to grow muscle where you used to want comfort. It forces you to develop inner authority where you used to want external reassurance. It forces you to become the kind of person who doesn't fall apart when the world goes quiet. And that's the paradox. The world starts respecting you when you stop asking it to. Your discipline becomes your aura. Your silence becomes your gravity. Your results become your social proof. People start moving differently around you, not because you demanded it, but because you became immovable. You became the type of person whose presence implies consequences, not loud consequences, quiet ones, the kind that come from a man who can walk away. So if you're watching this and you feel that empty room, good, that's the beginning. That's the moment the herd turns its back and the outlier turns into a weapon. Remember this line and let it sting every time you're tempted to beg for support. If no one supports you, you don't collapse, you evolve. And if you want the next step, we'll go deeper. In the next video, I'll show you how to stay disciplined when you feel empty, when motivation is dead and the only thing left is your protocol. Or we'll talk about how to cut off distractions without guilt, because distraction is just comfort wearing a mask. Either way, understand this. You don't need a cheering section. You need a spine. You need a system. You need a mind that obeys you. Because when you can support yourself, the world can't control you.